Percival Usher once said, "Man doesn't die of a broken heart, a failed liver, a deep wound, or even of old age. Man simply dies because he's a man." 60 seconds after midnight, you know what that means. Time to get that chilled glass out of the fridge, mix yourself one of them clean, creamy Crystal Head vodka martinis, drop in a few olives, take a sip, sit back, relax, chill. Let us do the rest. If you're wondering who we are, well, we're your tour guys through the real, the weird, and everything in between. The show for street philosophers, by street philosophers. I am your host, Sean Tango, and as always, this is Night Owls. This particular episode brought to you by seesantanana.com. You want a photographer with that professional quality, but the personal touch, you gotta go see Santana. As always, I will leave a link down below so you can check them out. Death. Shit. Death is one of those inescapable truths of the human experience. We all gotta go at some point. And if you live long enough, you will undoubtedly get a preview of what awaits us all. Now, I completely accept that in order for anything to exist, it must logically have a counterpart. Can't have night without day, straight, gay, hot, cold, dry, wet, pain, pleasure, asleep, awake, life, and death. That being said, I don't know if it's just me, but it just seems like there's been an extraordinary amount of death in a very short period of time, like just the last couple of years or whatever. A lot of it unexpected, you know what I'm saying? Some of it is expected. You know, I mean, when you have somebody who's in their golden years, you know, they're 70 something, 80 years old, and you know they died from health complications or whatever. Look, it's never easy when you lose someone. Just the permanence of that loss is incredible. You know what I'm saying? It's just overwhelming. It's never easy to lose a loved one, but there is some solace that you can find in the fact that someone like that who's in their 70s or 80s, man, they lived a long, prosperous life, right? Like they got to have like the full human experience, God bless their soul, you know? And also it's kind of, you know, you're kind of prepared for it. It's kind of expected. But it's all the other unexpected stuff, you know, when you have all these, you know, late 20s, early 30s to 50 in that range dropping like flies, like that's what really gets you. You know, and like I said, I'm not talking about like just the celebrities, even though it's been a lot. I mean, we lost David Bowie, we lost Robin Williams, B.B. King, Prince, Fife, Natalie Cole. You know, we've lost so many heads. And I was just talking to my boy Walter last week about how, you know, like literally, it's every time you turn on the TV, it's like our childhood is dying, literally. You know what I'm saying? Not figuratively speaking. No. Like the entertainers we grew up with and everything, like they're just dropping like flies. You know? It's surreal. And like I said, it's not just because that doesn't make it as tangible. Like it's not just the celebrities and all that kind of stuff, you know, because that just kind of makes you more aware of your age. And, you know, that I'm sure that plays a part of it too. You know what I'm saying? Like the older you get, the more you understand how vulnerable we really are and how fragile life really is, you know, and we become a lot more aware of our own mortality and shit. So I'm sure that, you know, age and all that, you know, plays a big hand in the way I'm looking at things right now. But what really, you know, has gotten me thinking more about death than usual is the personal losses. You know what I'm saying? I've lost two uncles, my aunt Mercedes, my boy Stylemaster, you know, my boy Tommy, and ex shit. Even my dog was passed away or whatever. And it really got me to thinking that, you know, at any given moment, someone somewhere is going to be dealing with this subject. It's just inescapable. And this particular episode is for you. You know what I'm saying? If you're somebody who just recently lost someone, or battling with some shit yourself, you know what I'm saying, or you know, maybe on the verge of losing someone, and this show's for you. Shit, this is the way I see it. We're all in this life thing together, so we might as well fucking act like it. You know what I'm saying? And I know what it feels like to have to deal with this kind of loss, and I believe that knowledge and communication, you know, obviously, you know, I'm coming from a place of compassion and a place of empathy. But the tools, you know, at the foundation of everything is that empathy and that compassion. Without that, forget about it, right? But the main tools that we got to use is knowledge and communication. You know what I'm saying? If we can better understand the thing and we can communicate about it openly, it makes it that much more easier to manage. Believe that. Now, I think that in order for us to really figure out, what is death, step number one is figure out what is life. What the hell does it all mean? Well, let's go by what we know. All right. Now, look, I always say this, I'm not gonna knock nobody's, philosophy or theological, beliefs or faiths or anything like that. Trust me, I got my own philosophical theories or whatever, but let's keep this universal and let's stick to the knowledge that we can all agree on. You know what I'm saying? Let's stick to what we know. Now, what do we know? Well, we do know one thing, right? And I'm going to touch on a few things, but we do know one thing, right? Everything in the universe is made up of energy, right? It's the building blocks of all matter. The same energy that makes us up, right? Makes up everything. The car, the cell, you know what I'm saying? Your dog. It's all the same energy. Thing is that it's in a constant flow and flux, and it's changing all the time, right? Different vibrations, shapes, forms. Now, what is the definition of energy? Like the actual definition of what energy is, right? If you ask a scientist, what is energy? Well, energy is everywhere, and it's in everything, and it can't be created nor destroyed. So what does that tell you? What's like the number one thing that pops in your head when you hear something like that? I mean, besides the fact that it sounds a lot like, what a priest would say when he was describing God, right? He's present in everything. He's everywhere. He's the Alpha and the Omega, has no beginning and no end, right? Sounds very fucking sounds like the same shit in different labels to me, right? But let's get down to the nitty-gritty of it. If everything is made up of energy and we're all made up of the same energy with just, different forms and different vibrations of that same energy. And I'm sticking to the science right now. But energy cannot be created nor can it be destroyed, then it means that what makes you, what makes me, existed before this form of the energy, this form of me. You get it? It existed before me. And that same energy that makes me up now will exist after me. Why? Because it never really had a creation point, therefore it's been here before. But it also cannot be destroyed, so that in some form it will continue to exist. So you can at least find some solace, right, in the understanding that those loved ones that you've lost, everything that makes them, from the physical to the spiritual and whatever it is that you like to believe made them who they are. Okay? Everything that made them still exists. It's in another form, but that energy still exists in the ether. Just like yourself, it is, look, man, understand that by scientific standards, you truly are one with everything. Feel me? You really are, man. You are one, and you are part of this infinite thing that never truly had a beginning and will never truly end. You feel me? That's deep. It really is, man. When I get down this man, I can go deep in the rabbit holes, and this is just me right now, what I'm about to say, you know what I'm saying? This is just like some OG pothead shit. But sometimes I start thinking about this, and I'll spark up a blue dream, and I'll be like, yo, man, it's crazy because the universe is in me and I'm in the universe and shit, I am the elements and shit, man. Like, this is fucking, we're all a bunch of fucking star people. Like, we're made up of stardust and shit. We're all a bunch of fucking star people. And even shit, we're even one with all the elements of the planet, man. Because, you know, you take a deep breath in, that's air and shit. You know, you swallow a little bit of saliva, that's water. You look at your flesh and bone, you say to yourself, oh shit, man, you know, the dead skin cells, you know, that come off of my arm literally make up like the dust in my house and shit like that. You know what I'm saying? I am the earth, man. I'm from dust to dust and shit. You know, you think about all the electrical currents and fucking, like, we fire too. You know what I'm saying? Like, damn, we the elements, man. Like, this is some deep fucking shit. But then and still, it always comes down to the question of consciousness, right? The soul. Like, if you ask a scientist, he'll say consciousness. You ask, you know, someone who's more spiritual, they'll say the soul, right? What is the soul? What is consciousness? Because we got the first rule of thermodynamics down, right? That was all that energy shit we just talked about. Energy can be transformed, you know, from one state to another, from one form to another, but it can't be created, can't be destroyed, right? So we got that down, right? That makes us feel a little better, I'm sure. So that explains a lot of the physical part of it, you know. But what about the soul, man? What about consciousness? Well, it's like I say, man, you know, let's go to what we know. What does science tell us? Well, in quantum theory, there is something called the observer effect. And what this basically states is that no matter can manifest itself in the physical world unless it has an observer to observe it. If you want to know more about how they measured this and how they came about this and all this stuff, go Google the double slit experiment or the observer effect. And I'm sure you'll find that, because I'm not going to go into like the whole thing right now. But the basic understanding is this, is that in order for anything to, you know, manifest itself physically, then, you know, it has to have an observer. It has to be observed. So what that implies is that we couldn't have a physical universe to live in. Like, the universe could not exist unless there was sort of pre-existing awareness or consciousness, right? Now, people can debate all day about whether this was like a God consciousness, like one big, you know, kind of glowing conscious thing that decided to make us or whatever. I don't know, right? Or you can argue the fact that maybe at one point, you know, all of our consciousness were one. Because at one point, right, according to the Big Bang, everything was one thing, right? So maybe at one point, just all of our consciousnesses, you know, all of our conscious were one. And then we became self-aware. And bow! Big Bang and shit. You know, now we got the universe. Which gets, you know, it gets some people to thinking that, well, consciousness may not be a local thing, you know? Consciousness may exist outside of the brain, not so much being created by the brain. Let me explain it to you this way, all right? Think of right now, right? Think of listening to a radio show. When you're listening to a radio show, the radio itself is not creating the signal, is not creating the show, right? The show is being created at a radio station that then sends out the signal that your radio receives, right? The radio station is the transmitter. The signal is just out in the ether, and boom, your radio just receives it. So with that same understanding, it's like your brain is the radio, okay? Some brains are a little broken, right? And that's why you get certain issues, but it's not a consciousness issue, it's a brain issue. It's like if your radio is broken and you can't, you know, you can't hear a station well, or you can't play a CD, it's not the CD, it's not the signal. The signal's there, right? It's not the radio station. It's not the radio signal. It's your radio's broken, and therefore, so the signal's fine. You know what I'm saying? Your radio's just not working right. But ultimately, your brain is the radio, right? And your consciousness is that signal that's in the ether, right? So your brain is the receiver. Now, what happens to that signal? What happens to the consciousness, to your consciousness once the body's gone, once the brain is gone, once it's changed forms and it can no longer be used in that capacity? Your guess is as good as mine, dog. But we're trying to better understand things. We're trying to figure things out. There were some studies that were done in Europe that dealt with just that had some really interesting results. You know what? After the I'm gonna look it up. I'm gonna look it up after I can't remember where in Europe. I'm tempted to say Germany, but during the break now, I'm gonna go ahead and look that up, and when we come back from the break, we can go ahead and discuss that too. All right. In the meantime, I'm gonna let my boy Paranormal take you into the break. I'll see you on the other side.
Flowers around me blossom idly. Strange colors of bodies without numbers haunt me. Who shall die for 1,000 lies? Mounted for some payoff, immune to the tunes of chaos. Holder of the unorthodox, we will not. I repeat, we will not. Prepaid visions, dream dodger martyr. System drop out when the many erase the children. Reply is anti. Man in a box on his own time. Yet the verdict rebukes our souls. Speak for widows who can't cope under tear-stained pillows. Blow up the outside world. Pathos of patient zero. Come through as taboo. Tuned from the squalor house of blues. This is the punk movement renewed. Beauty behind the bruise. 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 The fuck you know about your queen like the psych wards? And seeing that emptiness take your dawn. Your CD spin gifts, may it shine eternally. Something not meant for me, something only in dreams. I agree, at times thinking is the enemy. Closer to closure, cries behind the Stygian strings. Conversations within there, disgrace in the mirror. The fallen grace figure grows lesser. The veil of a smile for outsiders. Shadows in the heart draw back from the unforgettable fire. Stereo, I want it on. Tune in to turn away from all. Stereo, I want it on. Tune in to turn away from y'all. Beauty behind the bruise. Beauty behind the bruise. Beauty behind the bruise. Twitch from just a thought of caress, an inch of forever capture. Twisted by tears of joy and regret, a junkie for any sort of happiness. Memoirs of the abandoned generation. Again I apologize cause I've mistaken. Beauty behind the bruise. Beauty behind the bruise.
That was Paranormal, Beauty Behind the Bruise. As always, I'm gonna leave that link down below so you can go ahead and check them out. Show that love, show that support. Now, before the break, I told you that we will go ahead and talk about these studies about, what happens to consciousness, after the brain and the body's no longer here, where does the signal go, life after death, all these studies that they did and shit. out in Berlin, in Germany, there were a team of psychologists and psychiatrists, and they did this study over the course of 4 years. 944 volunteers were basically using a specific cocktail of drugs and some new equipment that hasn't been in use for too long. One of them being this new CPR machine called the Autopulse, which is a new cardiopulmonary machine that they use now. That it's only been in use like in the last few years or whatever, and it's actually been able to resuscitate people after they've been clinically dead from between like 40 minutes to an hour. It's incredibly impressive, right? But using this equipment and this specific cocktail of drugs, what they did with the 944 volunteers was basically kill these fucking people. Oh man, I'm sorry. They were volunteers and shit. Nobody was actually, everybody's still alive and shit. But they would basically put them in induced death, clinical death. They'd be clinically dead for about 20 minutes before being resuscitated and brought back to life. You know what that shit reminds me of? You remember that movie Flatliners? Damn, I'm fucking dating myself and shit. Well, I mean, if you're my age, you're gonna remember Flatliners and shit. If not, hey man, go check that movie out, youngster, because they actually doing this shit now. But anyhow, they said that, believe it or not, a very high percentage actually experienced something. They experienced some form of awareness. Okay. Some of them were able to, like, they could during the time that they were supposedly clinically dead, that they shouldn't have any consciousness whatsoever, they could not only describe certain things that were happening in the OR, they could actually describe, I think one person actually described what a family member or a friend was playing on their gaming console, like on their fucking Xbox back home at the time. It's some crazy shit. But those experiences were in the lower percentile. For the most part, the most common shared experiences, regardless of religious belief, whether they were atheists or Buddhists, Christians, Muslims, Jews, Hindus, Scientologists, fucking what, no matter what, they all shared very, very common experiences. And the most common experiences shared were feeling of detachment from the body, feeling of complete like disconnection from the ego, a feeling of levitation. Most of them were positive. People said that they felt more serene than they've ever felt in their lives, that there was a sense of security, of warmth, of total like dissolution into the fucking ether and shit. And of course, the presence of an overwhelming light, right? That cliched white light that everybody always talks about, and those are really the most common things that they shared. All this stuff going on while there is no brain activity. So what does that tell us about consciousness? If your brain is no longer working and yet you're still experiencing awareness, then your consciousness is still functioning. What does that mean? How long does that last? Does it change into something else? I don't know. But it's pretty good evidence that at the very least, there are moments after the body has, expired, that your quote unquote soul or your consciousness is still aware in some way. And of course, there were people that, there were a couple people that had no memory of anything. Like they just didn't remember anything. And that kind of brings me, it reminds me personally of like sleep studies and what we know about sleep and stuff like that. Like, for example, we know that in REM sleep, we know that we all dream every night, every single night, right? But we don't always remember. Like, how many times you've been like, I didn't dream anything last night. And the truth is that you did dream. You just have no memory of it. You just forgot. You know what I mean? So I'm thinking maybe it's one of those things where they did have an experience, but they simply just can't remember. Or maybe some people just don't have any experience at all, and they just go into they just kind of like dissolve into the calm, into the great beyond or whatever. And it's like a deep sleep, right? I don't know. But that's also in the lower percentile. There were also people that said that they had negative experiences. But no fiery pits or anything like that. Most people who have negative experiences said that they actually it was like reliving all the bad things you did to other people through their eyes and stuff like that, or it was mostly connected to some form of guilt, and it was almost like they had to relive that in order to move on, whatever that meant. But again, we don't know how it works. We don't know what that means. The only thing we do know is that people are having these experiences and that these things are happening. All right. And they're being studied. So it's, just one step closer to kind of understanding the great mystery of life and death. But something is happening, and it's pointing towards the fact that there is some sort of life after death as we know it, as far as consciousness is concerned as well, right? So if we were to recap everything, we know for sure, right, without debate, that what makes us up physically changes form but continues to exist, right? All the things that make you up, all the energy that makes you up, all the atoms and the molecules, and it changes form, but it can't be destroyed, so that continues. And also that, consciousness very well may exist outside of the mind, you know what I'm saying? And way after, the body has moved on and changed form. So, it's pointing towards the fact that, hey, maybe death is just a new beginning. Either way, at least I know that my loved ones who have passed away, in many ways, are still very much connected to me. They're still part of this huge sea of energy that we're all connected to, you know what I mean? So I could find a lot of solace in that, and hey, there's a good chance that on some other level, on some other vibration, there's still a conscience connection between us, you know what I mean? And I talk to my loved ones who have passed away. If nothing else, it's therapeutic for me, but it certainly doesn't hurt to remind myself that we're still connected, you feel? Now, as far as honoring those who have passed away, for me, it's pretty simple. It just comes down to honoring their memory, celebrating the way that they lived, and honoring them by living, the best life I can myself. It really just comes down to that. And hopefully when it's our turn, we would have lived a long, fulfilling life, and we would be at peace with it, knowing that, hey, we're always going to be a part of the big picture. You know what I'm saying? The universe would be incomplete without us. It's going to be all right. Now, communication is a two-way street. So I want you to feel free and go ahead and email us at nightowls. That's NITEOWLZ777 at gmail.com. Feel free to comment down below, subscribe so you know what's up next. Hit that like, hit that dislike, do what you need to do. But hey, if you just want to give your opinion on the subject matter, if you just need to talk, if you're willing to listen, we're always here. I'm getting that black light. It's hitting that witching hour. So you know what that means. It's time for me to go ahead, hit my herbal tea, spark up a blue dream, start meditating, get tucked in. Tomorrow is another day. As always, keep it peace, keep it love. treat people the way that you want to be treated. And I will see you next week. Peace.